They said my husband died on a wet highway outside Richmond. That was the story. That was the lie I repeated to everyone. I said it to the chaplain. I said it to the funeral home. I said it to the officer who folded the flag and pressed it into my hands like that small triangle could hold my whole life together. But 3 days after we buried him, his billionaire boss called me at midnight and whispered words that split my world in two. Don't tell your stepmother. Don't tell your sister. You could be in danger. I drove to his office shaking, not knowing I was about to see a dead man standing there. My name is Nora Bennett. I'm 42 years old. I'm a major in the United States Army. And until 11 days ago, I was a wife. Most of my life, I learned how to stay calm when everything around me was breaking apart. 3 deployments can teach a woman that. I've stood in rooms while walls shook from blasts close enough to make my teeth hurt. I've given orders when fear was trying to crawl up my throat. I never let my hands shake. I never let my voice crack. But nothing in my uniform, not one medal, not one hard day, prepared me for the soft voice of a chaplain telling me my husband was gone. Ethan was the steady one. That was our joke. Late at night, we used to sit on the back porch with a bottle of wine between us, and he would smile and say I fought wars overseas while he fought numbers in boardrooms as CFO of Sterling Technologies. It was a private tech empire built by a rich, quiet man named Charles Sterling. Ethan handled the house, the bills, the calendar, the school papers for our nephew when he stayed with us in the summer. He held up the small, plain parts of life that no one claps for. Some years, I was gone 8 months out of 12. He never complained. Not once. He used to grin and say, "Somebody has to hold the fort, Nora. Might as well be the guy who's good at math." He was 46. He had the strong build of a runner and never really lost it. His hair had just started turning silver at the sides. And he had this quiet way of looking at you, like he already knew what you were going to say before you said it. I loved him in the plain, strong way you love someone after 17 years. Not fireworks. Not wild sparks. Something bigger than that. Something that held weight. The kind of love you stop looking at because you are too busy leaning on it every day. Then the highway patrol called. After that came the funeral. And after that, nothing in my life stayed where it was supposed to be. I stood by his grave in my dress uniform because I could not make myself wear anything else. Some strange part of me believed that if I stood straight enough, if I locked my body into old army memory, I would not fall apart. My stepmother, Mary Ann, cried loud enough to make people turn around. My stepsister, Brooke, dabbed at her face with a tissue that never seemed to touch real tears. I watched them the way I used to watch open ground before a mission, looking for the thing that felt wrong. And something did feel wrong. If I am honest, it had felt wrong for years. But grief can make you kind to people who do not deserve your kindness. So I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself pain can twist your thoughts. I told myself not to listen to my own instincts. That was my first mistake. 3 days after the funeral, my phone rang at 11:50 at night. I almost let it ring. By then, I had already heard from too many people I barely remembered, all of them saying sorry in voices that felt empty. But something made me answer. Nora. The man's voice was low and sharp. A man used to being obeyed. This is Charles Sterling. I found something that belonged to Ethan. I need you to come to the office tonight if you can. I sat straight up in bed. Ethan's side was still smooth and untouched. I had not let myself sleep on it. Some broken part of me thought if I left that side alone, none of this would become real. Mr. Sterling, I said, it's midnight. I know what time it is. Then he paused. And inside that pause, I heard something I never expected from a man worth billions. Fear. Nora, listen to me carefully. Don't tell your stepmother. Don't tell your sister. Don't tell anyone where you're going. You could be in danger. Then the line went quiet. I could hear his breathing. He could hear mine. Two people standing at the edge of something dark, both afraid to name it. I did not ask questions. Living with Ethan had taught me something. When a careful man breaks his own rules, you do not waste time talking. You move. I pulled on jeans and a jacket. Then I reached for Ethan's old field coat. It still smelled a little like his cologne. That nearly broke me. But I put it on anyway and walked out into the cold night. The streets were almost empty. I drove with both hands tied on the wheel, the way I used to hold my rifle before patrols. Not because I was panicking. Because I was ready. Sterling Technologies filled the top 4 floors of a glass tower downtown. The whole building was dark except for one lit window high above the city. Ethan's old office. Security let me up without a word, like they had been warned to expect me. The elevator climbed in silence. My reflection stared back at me in the shiny doors. Hollow eyes. Hard jaw. A woman who looked like she was walking into a fight she did not yet understand. The doors opened. Ethan's office was ahead, wide open. Charles Sterling stood near the window with his back to me, city lights spread below him like a field of stars trying to die. But he was not the reason my breath stopped. Another man stood near the desk. Tall. Gray at the temples. Very still. Like he had been waiting a long time for me. Then he turned around. My knees almost gave out. Impossible, I whispered. My own voice sounded far away. You died 8 years ago. The man standing in my dead husband's office was Owen Carter. I had not said that name out loud in 8 years. No one had. Not after the warehouse fire downtown that was supposed to have killed him. Back then, Owen had been an internal investigator at Sterling Technologies. Quiet. Careful. The kind of man who noticed more than he said. He used to bring his kids to company picnics. Once, when Ethan got stuck in a meeting, Owen helped me change a flat tire in the rain. I remembered his funeral too. I remembered his wife crying into a folded flag. I remembered thinking grief could make strangers feel like family for one afternoon. And now here he was, alive, wearing a gray suit like he had dressed for the night he would come back from the dead. Nora, he said softly, I know this is a shock. You need to sit down. I did not move. My hands had gone cold. Not from weather. From the body trying to protect itself from something the mind cannot yet understand. You're supposed to be dead, I said. Charles finally turned from the window. He looked older than I remembered. Not tired in the normal way. Heavy. Like he had been carrying something for years. Please sit, Nora. There is a lot you need to know, and not much time. I sat because my legs were shaking so badly I did not trust them anymore. Owen pulled a chair across from me. Up close, I saw new lines around his eyes. A thin scar on his jaw I did not remember. A face from another life, worn by 8 missing years. I didn't die in that fire, he said. Charles helped me disappear. I found embezzlement inside the company. Powerful people were tied to it. Staying Owen Carter would have gotten me killed. So I stopped being him. I stared at him. Why now? My voice came out harder than I meant it to. Hard with grief. Hard with anger. Why come back now? After Ethan, I could not finish. Owen's mouth tightened. Because 2 months ago, Ethan found me. He tracked me down through an old contact. He asked for my help. Not with company business. He stopped. And in that small silence everything shifted again. With your family. My stomach dropped. He had been looking into something for almost a year, Owen said. He didn't tell you because you were deployed, and he didn't want you carrying this out there. He also wasn't sure at first what he was seeing. But what he found was not inside Sterling Technologies. Owen looked me right in the eyes. It was inside your own family. Marianne's face flashed in my mind. Her loud crying at the funeral. The way she held Brooke's hand too tightly, not like a mother comforting a daughter, but like a woman steadying someone who might say the wrong thing. I had seen it. I had ignored it. Owen reached into his jacket and pulled out a small lockbox with brass corners. He set it on the desk between us with so much care it felt holy. Ethan gave me this 3 weeks before he died. He said if anything happened to him, I had to get it to you. Only you. Not your stepmother. Not your sister. He was very clear. My fingers trembled as Owen unlocked the box. Inside was a USB drive. A leather journal filled with Ethan's tight, neat writing. A small brass key. And a stack of letters tied with red ribbon. My chest hurt at the sight of that ribbon. Ethan always wrapped my birthday gifts with red ribbon. It was our private little joke. Meaningless to anyone else. Everything to me. He never believed the crash was random, Owen said quietly. These were his exact words. If I die, look at her family first. I stared at him. Then something outside the window caught my eye. A black SUV had pulled up at the curb below. Its headlights cut through the dark. The doors opened slowly. Not the way scared people move. The way confident people move when they do not fear being caught. Owen turned and followed my gaze. His whole face changed. Flat. Sharp. Dangerous. They're here. Charles moved faster than I thought a man his age could move. He crossed the office, grabbed a bookshelf, and pulled it away from the wall. Behind it was a narrow door I had never noticed. This way, he said. No fear in his voice. No question either. Owen shoved everything back into a leather satchel and we hurried through the hidden door, down a concrete stairwell that smelled like dust and old rain. My heart pounded the way it had on my last deployment, when every part of your body turns into a warning system. The stairs led to a hidden room under the building. Concrete walls. A row of screens. A heavy steel door Charles sealed behind us with the easy move of a man who had done it before. You have a panic room? I asked. Even then, some wild part of me wanted to laugh. My life had become so strange, so fast, it felt unreal. Charles did not smile. I have several. In my world, paranoia keeps you alive. One of the screens showed the black SUV still waiting outside. 2 people stood beside it under a streetlight. I could not see their faces clearly. They'd been watching this building for 3 days, Charles said. Ever since Owen came back. Who are they? I asked, even though some part of me already feared the answer. Owen laid the journal, the letters, and the little brass key on the steel table. Ethan thought your stepmother had help. Someone watching. Someone willing to do more than watch if needed. He looked at me with something close to pity. Nora, how much do you really know about what happened to your father's estate after he died? That question hit me from the side. My father had died when I was 34, in the middle of my second deployment. Marianne had been married to him 11 years by then. By the time I got home for the funeral, most of the paperwork was already done. She said she handled it to spare me, I said slowly. The house. The accounts. Everything. I was overseas. I trusted her. Ethan didn't, Owen said. A deep, cold silence filled the room. About a year ago, Owen went on, he started finding problems. Papers that did not match your father's original will. A trust account that had been quietly changed. Signatures Ethan believed were fake. He came to me because he didn't know who else to trust. Charles breathed out slowly. Marianne and Brooke contacted Ethan more than once before he died. They wanted him to help move certain assets. Your assets. Into a new trust that would have cut you out while you were overseas and unable to fight back. The words moved through me like ice water. I thought of every long deployment. Every month I trusted the people back home to keep life safe. Ethan had done that. I had believed Marianne was doing the same. Owen opened Ethan's journal to a page marked with torn paper and turned it toward me. Dates. Names. Dollar amounts circled twice. Notes in the margins. Ethan had written everything down. He was building a case, Owen said. Quietly. He never told you because he didn't want this on your shoulders while you were deployed. And maybe because he hoped he was wrong. Then Owen held up the silver flash drive. There's a video on this. Ethan recorded it 6 weeks before the crash. I think you need to see it. My hands were strangely steady when I took it. But inside my chest, something was shrinking, bracing for pain. Charles plugged the drive into one of the monitors. The screen flickered. Then Ethan's face appeared. He looked tired. Thinner. But alive. So alive that the air left my lungs. He looked into the camera the way he used to look at me across the dinner table. Like no one else in the world mattered. If you're watching this, he said, and the sound of his voice almost undid me, I'm probably gone. I sat frozen while my dead husband spoke to me. Your greatest enemy, he said quietly, was never on the battlefield. The screen went black. Behind me, Charles's phone buzzed once. Sharp. Ugly in the silence. He answered, listened, and his face turned pale in the blue light. When he lowered the phone, his hand was not steady anymore. That was my security team, he said. Someone just broke into your house, Nora. 2 unmarked cars followed us all the way home. Charles's security people moved around us like they had trained for this exact night. I sat beside Owen and watched familiar streets race past the window. Streets Ethan and I had driven together 1,000 times. It felt wrong that grief and fear could live in the same body at the same time, but there they were, both breathing inside me. When we reached my house, 2 police cars were already in the driveway. Red and blue lights washed over the front porch of the home Ethan and I had shared for 12 years. A young officer met me at the door, his face carefully blank. Ma'am, someone forced entry through the back door. They were gone before units arrived. Nothing appears to be missing from the main living areas. The main living areas, I repeated. And right then, I knew where they had gone. Ethan had a small office off the garage. Years ago, he turned an old storage room into his workspace. Hidden under a fake floor panel was a heavy steel safe bolted into the concrete. He thought I didn't know. I had found it by accident once while cleaning. I never said anything. I think part of me knew he needed a place that was only his. I walked through my own house like I had never seen it before. The officer followed me. Owen and Charles stayed one step behind. All of them watching me the way people watch someone standing too close to the edge. The office door hung open. The fake panel had been ripped up and thrown aside. Splinters lay across the floor. The safe door was bent and hanging wrong, forced open by tools brought for that one job. It was empty. I just stood there, staring into that dark space. Feeling something that was not relief and not despair. Something in between. Something colder. He moved it all, Owen said from the doorway. He studied the damage with the calm eyes of a man trained to read a crime scene. Months ago, from the dust pattern. Whoever came tonight was looking for something that had not been here for a long time. Charles crouched by the safe, ran a gloved finger along the inside edge, then stood. Ethan knew someone would come. He made sure there would be nothing left. Later, after the officers went outside to finish their report, we sat in my living room. The room felt smaller than it ever had before. Owen opened the last item from the satchel. A plain envelope. Sealed carefully, just like everything Ethan touched. Inside were papers that stole my breath 1 page at a time. A copy of a will dated 4 months before Ethan died. Bank records. Then photographs. Owen spread them across my coffee table like playing cards. One showed Marianne in the parking lot of a downtown law office, talking to a man in an expensive suit. Another showed Brooke at a coffee shop with someone else. Papers covered the table between them. A business card lay beside a cup. Insurance brokerage services. Ethan believed someone in your family had a reason to want him out of the way, Charles said carefully. Maybe not to hurt you directly, but to remove the one person standing between them and full control of your father's estate. I looked at the pictures until they blurred. You're telling me someone wanted him dead? Nobody answered. That silence told me enough. Then Charles cleared his throat. There is something else. Ethan quietly used part of his savings over the last few years to buy a large stake in Sterling Technologies. He never kept those shares in his own name. Then whose name? I asked. Charles looked right at me. Yours. I stared at him. He placed everything in a trust with you as the only beneficiary. You have owned a major part of this company for over 2 years. I do not believe you knew that. The number he told me next did not feel real. It did not belong to my life. To my simple house. My deployments. My careful husband. Yet somehow Ethan had built an entire shield around me in secret, and I had never seen it. Owen stacked the papers back into order. There is one more person you need to meet. Someone who can tell us exactly what Ethan was building before he died. And exactly what your stepmother and stepsister are still trying to finish. That night, I made a choice. Grief would have to wait. It did not leave me. It sat in my chest like a stone, just as heavy as before. But I folded it away the way a soldier folds a flag, with both hands and great care, to deal with later. Because this was a mission now. Ethan had spent the last months of his life building a case. Quietly. Carefully. The way he balanced everything. Finishing it became the last thing I could still do for him. 2 days later, Owen took me to meet Helen Cross, a forensic accountant in her 60s. Soft voice. Sharp eyes. She had spent 30 years untangling fraud for federal prosecutors before retiring. She spread Ethan's papers across her dining room table like a doctor laying out tools before surgery. In less than an hour, she built a timeline that made me sick. Years of tiny thefts from my father's estate. Hidden in complicated wording. Covered by paperwork most people would never understand. Your husband was very good at this, Helen told me. He built a case that could stand in court. What he was still missing was proof of intent. Proof this was not just sloppy money handling, but a planned scheme. That was when I surprised even myself. I decided to lie. Not to the police. Not to Charles, Owen, or Helen. To Marianne and Brooke. From that moment on, the version of Nora they would see was the grieving widow they expected. Lost. Soft. Easy to guide. A woman who did not know she owned part of a tech empire. A woman who still trusted family. A woman who might sign whatever they put in front of her. The ugly part was this: it wasn't hard to act. Because some days, my grief wasn't acting at all. Marianne called within a week. Her voice dripped sweetness through the phone. That same fake warm voice she had used at every holiday table for 11 years. Sweetheart, I know this is a terrible time, but we really need to talk about your father's estate paperwork. Some documents need updating now that Ethan is gone. I said yes. I said I trusted her. I said exactly what she wanted to hear. And while I said it, something cold and calm settled inside me. The same calm that used to come before missions. Fear still there. Just mastered. A few days later, Brooke came over with a folder and a soft smile that never reached her eyes. She walked me through papers about simplifying the trust and protecting me from the stress of managing complex assets while grieving. I nodded. I asked confused little questions. The kind a tired widow would ask. I signed nothing. Helen had warned me. But I let them think I was close. That one more push would do it. While that was happening, Owen quietly placed a recording device in the sitting room, because Marianne and Brooke always wanted to meet there. The room with the nice light. The room where Ethan used to read the Sunday paper. Charles started building something bigger too. He arranged a shareholders meeting 6 weeks away, officially to handle Ethan's estate holdings after his death. Marianne and Brooke believed that meeting would give them everything. As the weeks passed, they got bolder. That is what people do when they think they have already won. One afternoon, Brooke let something slip. She said, almost laughing, that Ethan had gotten too curious for his own good near the end. My heart slammed so hard I thought she might hear it. But I just sat there with my hands folded and nodded like I did not understand the weight of what she had said. That night, alone in the house that no longer felt safe, I played the recording for Owen and Charles. They think it's over, I said. My voice was steady. My hands were not. They think Ethan's evidence died with him. Charles studied me for a long moment. And the shareholders meeting? They'll come, I said. Marianne has already asked Brooke what she plans to wear. Saying it out loud made me sick. 2 women planning their victory over the bones of a family. The man who tried to stop them had been in the ground less than 3 months. The morning of the meeting came gray and heavy. Ethan used to call weather like that funeral weather. The memory hit me so hard I had to stand still for a moment. Then I dressed with care. Not in black. In a navy suit Ethan once told me made me look like I could run the whole company. Back then it was a joke. Now it felt like a message he had left behind. Marianne and Brooke arrived at Sterling Technologies right on time, dressed like women heading to a celebration they thought belonged to them. At 9:15, the boardroom doors opened. A man I did not know walked in carrying a black case. The second I saw Marianne's face shift, I knew the last lie between us was about to die. The boardroom took up the whole top floor. Glass walls on 3 sides. The city spread below us like something all of us could touch, though only one of us truly owned part of it. Marianne sat near the head of the table in a cream dress, hair done perfectly, glowing with the proud stillness of a woman waiting for her reward. Brooke sat beside her, checking her phone with lazy confidence, like she had already spent the money in her head. I sat across from them. Charles on one side. Helen on the other. My hands rested in my lap. Calm. Still. Giving them nothing. Charles began the meeting in his slow, steady voice. Thank you for coming. Today we will finalize matters related to Ethan Bennett's estate, including the handling of certain shares held in trust. Marianne's smile widened just a little. Before we begin, Charles said, I would like to introduce someone. Many of you may remember Owen Carter, who worked here as an internal investigator before his death 8 years ago. The whole room froze. Brooke slowly lowered her phone. Marianne's smile stayed on her face, but something behind her eyes flickered. Then the doors opened. Owen walked in carrying the black case. He set it on the table with calm hands and said, I'm not dead. I disappeared to protect an investigation. I'm here today because Ethan Bennett asked me to make sure this reached the people it belongs to. Marianne's control cracked at the edges. This is insane, she snapped, her voice rising. Then she turned to me. Nora, what is this? I looked at her. Really looked at her. Past the careful hair. Past the fake tears. Past 11 years of small cuts dressed up as love. It's the truth, Marianne, I said softly. Something Ethan spent the last year of his life making sure I would find. Helen opened her laptop and began walking everyone through the financial timeline. Money taken from my father's estate. Trust papers changed in secret. Signatures that did not match my father's real handwriting. Slide after slide. Date after date. Brooke's face lost all color by the third one. Marianne's jaw went hard. You have no proof this was intentional, Marianne said at last. Her voice had gone low now. Dangerous. Financial mistakes happen. That is not a crime. Helen met her stare. Mistakes do happen. But mistakes usually do not come with forged signatures and hidden transfers made while the true beneficiary is serving overseas. Then Owen opened the black case and connected a drive to the screen at the end of the room. There's more, he said. Ethan recorded a great deal during the last months of his life. He was careful. Thorough. Exactly who he always was. The screen lit up. Ethan's face filled it. I watched Marianne go stiff as stone. He spoke with the same calm voice he used when explaining bills at our kitchen table. He laid out everything he had found. The fake documents. The trust changes. The meetings with lawyers. The insurance broker. Every careful little move they thought no one had seen. Then came the part that sucked the air from the room. An audio recording. The sound was rough, but the voice was clear. Marianne's. If Ethan disappears, she said through the speakers, everything gets much easier. Nora is never home long enough to manage any of this herself. No one moved. No one breathed. Brooke turned toward her mother with a face I had never seen before. Not just fear. Horror. The horror of suddenly seeing how dark someone really is. That is out of context, Marianne said. But the sweetness in her voice was gone. All that was left was something thin and desperate. There was no context in the world that could save her now. Charles closed his laptop. The board has reviewed all documents with outside legal counsel over the last several weeks. Effective today, all shares and assets held in the Bennett family trust, including Ethan's company holdings, returned fully and only to Nora Bennett, exactly as written in the trust documents Ethan filed before his death. Brooke started crying. Real tears this time. Nothing like the tiny show she put on at the funeral. Marianne stayed very still, staring down at her hands like she could force time backward if she looked hard enough. I stood up. For the first time since Ethan died, something inside my chest loosened. Not peace. Not yet. But the first breath before it. He knew, I said. He knew what you were doing. And instead of fighting with you, he built a case so strong you could never talk your way out of it. That was Ethan. Quiet until the moment quiet stopped being enough. Security appeared at the door. Then two officers who had clearly been waiting nearby. They moved toward Marianne. And just then, the boardroom door opened again. A man in a gray suit stepped in and held up a badge. Mrs. Marianne Bennett, he said. His voice was flat and final. We need to ask you some questions about your son-in-law's death. The investigation lasted 6 months. I spent those months the way I had survived every hard season of my life. I showed up. I did the work in front of me. I did not let the ache become all of me. Federal investigators moved slowly, building their case carefully. They proved what Ethan had already feared. The fake trust papers were only the top layer. Underneath was a deeper scheme. Years of fraud. Insurance tricks. Money moved through people who were very willing to help Marianne and Brooke hide what they were doing. Could the government prove every part of that fraud reached all the way into Ethan's crash? Not fully. There was enough to raise terrible questions. Not enough, the prosecutor told me gently, to prove murder in court without doubt. I had to learn to live with that. To carry the question without letting it crush me. What they could prove, they proved completely. Marianne pleaded guilty to fraud, forgery, and obstruction after she tried to destroy records once she realized investigators were closing in. Brooke cooperated once she finally understood what her mother had done. She received probation, restitution, and a lighter sentence. And to my surprise, some tired old piece of family loyalty inside me felt grateful the court saw a difference between the woman who built the trap and the daughter too weak to walk away from it. I saw Brooke one time before sentencing. We sat in a small room that smelled like old coffee and cleaning spray. She looked smaller without her polished clothes and pretty smile. I didn't know, she said, crying for real. About Ethan. I swear, Nora, I didn't know what she could do. I believed her. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. I had learned by then that people can stand close to darkness and still pretend they do not see it, especially when they are warm from its fire. I told her I hoped she built an honest life after this. And I meant it. I have not spoken to her since. But sometimes I still think of her the way you think of an old house she once lived in. Familiar. But not home anymore. That spring, Charles Sterling stepped down as CEO quietly. No big show. No proud speech. Just one last coffee in his office while the city spread below us. He told me Ethan's death changed something in him. I built an empire, he said, looking out the window. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing the people inside it. Ethan saw people. He saw everything. It cost him more than it should have. But he was the most honest man in every room he entered. Before he left, Charles handed control of a charitable foundation to me. Ethan had started it years earlier without telling me. It used his own savings to support military families living the same kind of long, lonely marriage Ethan and I had lived. Charles set the papers in front of me and said, "He wanted you to have this one day. He just ran out of time." I stayed in the army. That surprised people. Maybe they thought money would pull me away. Maybe they thought family betrayal, hidden fortune, and public scandal would make me run from the hardest thing in my life. But the army had never been the hardest thing. It had been the steady thing. The one place I always knew where to put my hands when everything else slipped away. That summer, I took command at a new post. And I carried Ethan's foundation with me. Quietly, I grew it into something real. A scholarship in his name for military families who lost a spouse. Support money for veterans coming home to empty houses and broken lives. Small things, maybe. But strong things. Useful things. Ethan would have liked that. The last letter waited the longest. Owen had told me there was one more envelope in Ethan's collection. Sealed. Dated the week before he died. Meant to be opened only after everything else was over. So I waited. Until the trial was done. Until Marianne was sentenced. Until the last painful business of that terrible year had finally gone quiet. Then one evening, I sat alone at our kitchen table and opened it. His handwriting filled 2 pages. Careful as always. Near the end, he wrote the line I know by heart now. I do not even need the paper anymore. I couldn't choose how my story ended, but I could choose how yours begins. I sat there for a long time after I finished. The house was quiet. It had been quiet for months. But this silence felt different. Not empty. Full. I took the letter outside to the back porch where we used to sit with wine and talk about nothing and everything. The sky was clearer than usual. More stars than the city normally allowed. I stood there in the dark and felt something inside me finally loosen all the way. Not because justice was perfect. It wasn't. Not because grief was gone. It never would be. But because I was not living in darkness anymore. Ethan had spent his whole quiet, careful life building me a way into the light. And at last, I was standing in it. If this story touched your heart, tell me which moment hit you the hardest. And tell me where you're watching from tonight. There are many more emotional stories waiting for you here on Twisted Family Revenge Stories, so subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what comes next. Thank you for staying with me through this one.